The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I'm delighted to join in this budget debate, the 26th that I have participated in as a parliamentarian, in which, if you look at the core economic statistics, this is the best budget in a generation. It doesn't matter whether you look at the issues of the balancing of the books, whether you look at job growth, whether you look at income growth, if you look at the state of the government's level of debt, if you look at the issue of inflation, I challenge members opposite to tell me a budget in the last 25 years that's had a better set of economic core statistics than Bill English's 2016 budget. Let me go through each of them. Economic growth, 3.3%, 2.6%, 2.8%. 3 strong years, both now and into the future. Tell me an OECD developed country that has their economy growing stronger than ours. I can remember budget after budget after budget in this parliament where we have had depressing numbers of our economy scratching to make 1%, let alone those strong numbers. Let's look at the issue of jobs. When I came to this parliament, unemployment in New Zealand was 11%. We all know there are countries in the world right now, US, Europe, where unemployment numbers are up 10, 11, 12, 15%. Countries where 25% of young people are unemployed. And what this budget shows is not only that unemployment in New Zealand is set to go lower than 5%, but over the next 4 years, another 170,000 jobs in our country. And I again challenge members opposite, show me a budget in the last 25 years that has been as strong in terms of job growth. And Mr Speaker, let's look at the issues, the hard issues around living within one's means. Because I have sat in this House so often listening to budget debates that are riddled in red ink, billions and billions of dollars of deficits, right through the 90s, Mr Speaker. Look at those budget figures in 2009, when the Treasury said this country was going to run deficits for the next 10 years. Let's look at that budget figure only 5 years ago, when the budget presented in this House had a deficit of $17 billion. And I say to Mr English, to deliver a budget balance last year, again this year and next year, is a stunning result, and so too are those future surpluses that are going to give this country choices. And then take an issue, I know the member raises the question of debt. When I came to this parliament, this country had debt of over 90% of GDP, 90%. What this budget shows is debt levels of 25%. Do you know what? Well, Annette King asked this question. Do you know what the level of debt for New Zealand was projected by Treasury when I picked up my ministerial warrant and joined the Cabinet in 2008? They said New Zealand's debt in this year was going to be 110% of GDP. 110% of GDP. Annette King was your legacy, and Bill English has it down to 25%. And I challenge members opposite and say, tell me the country in the OECD that's got a lower level of debt than New Zealand, because now is even lower than Australia, which was the gold standard. And again, I say to Bill English, congratulations. And then the other figure I say, so many budgets that I've been part of, the big debate's been again the cost of living. The fact that the costs of the Kiwi families of paying their food bill, paying for the basic costs of living. When we came to government, Annette King, inflation was running at 5%. What did that mean? That means families were going backwards by 5% per year, and Bill English has resided over an economy that has the lowest level of inflation in 50 years at only 0.4%. And I say that's what you get with good economic management. And equally so, I remember so many budgets where the big debate was interest rates. Why do interest rates matter? I tell you why. Because for families struggling to pay their mortgage, for farms, for businesses that are wanting to invest in growth and jobs, interest rates matter a heck of a lot. And why aren't we debating about interest rates? Because they're at the lowest level in 40 years, and that's good for Kiwi families, and that is good for Kiwi businesses. And at the same time, I just thought the gall of Grant Robertson to say there was nothing in this budget for health. Well, let him tell me something. This budget provides for bowel cancer screening. And I've had people die, mates, die of bowel cancer. There are hundreds of New Zealanders every year that die of bowel cancer, and this budget is going to provide a screening program that's going to save over 100 Kiwi lives per year. And I say that is good news. And I say the extra $70 million for Pharmac that's going to enable this country to have more drugs so that we can prevent disease, so that we can save New Zealanders' lives is good news. Now, Mr. Speaker, I openly acknowledge that because New Zealand's economy is doing so well, tens of thousands of Kiwis are voting confidence in New Zealand and moving to our country. That is true, and that is putting pressure on housing. But here's the real question. Which government has got the wherewithal to deal with the root causes that are so pertinent to the issues of housing? And I have to agree with Phil Twyford. When Phil Twyford said 2 weeks ago, the most important issue around housing is land supply. And on that we agree, absolutely. Because here's the numbers. Over the last 25 years, the price of a section in Auckland has gone from $100,000 to $450,000. And if the section is $450,000, of course there will not be an affordable home built on that section. And so if this Parliament is serious about dealing with Auckland's housing issues, we have to deal with the issues that have sections in Auckland at $450,000. And here's the problem. We on this side of the House are very clear in the solutions. That's why we're reforming the RMA. That's why we're driving a new unitary plan in Auckland. That's why tomorrow we'll be announcing a new national policy statement on the supply of land for housing. But here's the rub. For all the love fest that occurred yesterday between Labor and the Greens on the issue that Labor admits is the most fundamental to solving housing, these guys, Labor and the Greens, are 100 miles apart. The Green Party strongly believes in metropolitan urban limits. They are behind the policies that have seen section prices go stupid over the last 20 years. And what I say to this Parliament is that the dysfunctionality on such a fundamental issue as metropolitan limits and housing shows that the Labor and the Greens do not have the solution. They can have all the exchange of roses in a Bachelor-style episode, but they need to resolve, Annette King, the fundamental policy issues like RMA reform and metropolitan urban limits if we are to deliver the long-term sustainable solutions around housing. And so I simply challenge Labor opposite. Is the Greens on the same page as you on scrapping metropolitan urban limits? Are they on the same page in respect of the requirements to reform the RMA, where they now recognise the requirements for reform? Because the truth is, members opposite are all talk on housing, but actually around the core issues that we need to address, they have no idea, and they have not resolved fundamental issues like land supply that are critical to finding the solution long-term for Kiwi families.